Hey everyone, welcome to the Gateway API meeting for August the 5th, 2024. As always, this is a CNCF meeting, so we abide by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which translates to be nice to each other. So we got quite a bit to talk about today. Rob, do you want to take us through the 112, 1.2 discussion? Sorry, 112, geez.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that's optimistic.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I don't have a whole lot, despite it being written out. This is mostly an exercise for myself and anyone else who's trying to to follow up of what is actually left. So first up, if you remember, this is our first time doing enhancement phases or this whole release cycle thing we're trying to do. And that's been good. I think we got some good feedback last week, but we're entering a new phase, and that is API refinement. That basically means take the thing you had in the gap and turn it into an actual API. Like do the Go changes, do the spec changes, all that. In some cases, that may result in a little bit more refinement as we go, as we look at the types again and say, wait, we really agreed to that. We should really tweak this or that, or, we missed this detail, right? So that is what's intended for the next however many weeks. When we wrote up this release cycle, we said this phase would take between 3 and 5 weeks. If you happen to be in North America, you'll note in the middle of that is a long weekend, which a lot of people tend to take off time around there. So just pointing that out, as we probably don't want to have a deadline right before or after that weekend. So with that, I threw in a couple suggestions, and we can come back to this later in the meeting once we've looked at what's left. So we could aim for Wednesday, August 28th. That's a little less than 3.5 weeks from now. Or we could aim for Monday, September 9, which is exactly 5 weeks from now. So either go on the low end or the long end of that list. And if anyone on this call is working on one of these enhancements and would like more or less time, this is a great time to speak up. Or if you think you're just going to want more time to help review or whatever it might be, please, take a moment, think about that, and leave a comment, drop something in chat, whatever it could be. Immediately following this cycle is the idea of a SIG network review, which is basically where we take all the work we've done and we have a session with SIG network leads that basically runs through, summarizes what we have in here, and get some feedback from them. And I think this particular meeting, we're not just trying to cover everything we have, but also the things that nearly made it in but missed. And gateway merging is a great example of that one that really needs a lot of thought, and I want to make sure we can at least cover that. So I left a couple dates that might work for that, September 4 or September 10. Somehow I have some rough calendar visibility for 3 of the leads. And so those were times that I thought I could get an hour reasonably from them, but keeping in mind that some of the leads are in EU, so like Antonio, for example, so that tends to lead towards earlier in my day, at least if we're doing that. But we have also never found a time where every lead could make it, so we'll see. And
Yeah,
Nick is obviously,
I've already accepted I'm staying up late for that one.
yeah. That's I am sorry. So maybe maybe in that case, pushing even earlier. I couldn't. It was hard to find an earlier time than even 10 a.m. Pacific. So, but I'll try and take another look.
It's fine. I'll make it work.
So, yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, for new experimental gaps, the things that made it in: named route rules, percentage-based request mirroring, backend MTLS, and configurable retries. Thank you, everyone. Unfortunately, the things that missed this cycle are gateway merging and request timeouts. appreciate everyone like Christine and Dave who pushed to try to get those in, but unfortunately just ran out of time. But I think they're great candidates for the next release.
100%.
And part of the reason we're trying to do this whole, very time boxed release cycle is to try to make it less painful to miss a release. So the idea is that if we can get these cycles short enough, missing a release is not a big deal. You've got another one coming up in a matter of months. Low number of months, anyways. Next up, graduating to standard. I think everyone knows these ones, timeouts and duration. Flynn is dealing with this one. I need to reach out to him. He's taken it on himself to write client libraries for handling this duration format in Go, Python, and Rust, which is a really fun, cool thing for him to do. But if anyone wants to help out, I am pretty confident he would accept help on this one. So yeah, backend protocol selection is good to go. And then in cluster gateway config, I'm pretty sure that's good. There's conformance test now. Maybe we just need to make sure we have enough implementations passing those conformance tests. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't know if
I think
anyone
we
on the
might
call
have
has
3
more.
already. I think we might have 3
Okay.
already. Oh,
Okay.
speak of the devil. Keith is just connecting right now.
There you go. Man, that's
Hi,
awesome.
Keith. We were literally just talking about in-cluster gateway config.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. How can I help?
Just wanted to check, do we have folks, how many implementations do we have passing that? I mean, I know one because Tam did Cilium when I asked him to, but do we have any others?
Yeah, I did Istio. It's passing. I think we just need to confirm Envoy Gateway is passing them, and then I think we're good to go.
Awesome.
I made the actual status changes in that PR as well. So once we get the confirmation of the passing implementations, I think that's everything.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So that's the 3 that are graduating to standard. Have we got the updates, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much there. I mean, I think we've had a lot of discussion about supported features. We are making a breaking API change here. Yay. So be very, very careful about this one. It's still gated by experimental, but of course that can still break your implementation if you're not very careful. So we'll just need to document that as clearly as we possibly can for both end users and implementations. And then the last one is backend TLS policy. I think Candace and Whitney have been running with that. I've been seeing some progress on the conformance test PR. I don't know if either are on this call, if there's anything that they need. Oh, cool. Yeah.
So Candice was able to submit a draft PR, but she's now out of office. So I've started picking up like the tests, the remaining test cases. We have sort of canceled some of the original test cases that was proposed. And there's one that you suggested, Rob, that I still need clarity around, which is what is the expected behavior when an implementation do not recognize backend TLS policy? I think in the Slack thread you mentioned that any request to the backend ref service that has a backend TLS policy, that request should be rejected. But I'm curious if that is like the expected behavior. Is that what we are certain that we want to happen?
Yeah, and Nick, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, I think this is one of the really interesting parts about having an official policy included, is that even if you don't actually want to implement it, you have to watch it, because if we don't say something like, if there's a backend TLS policy and you don't support it, then you have to reject the traffic, then the traffic won't work anyway, probably, because the backend service is going to say, hey, yeah, where's my TLS? And so so practically, if we don't say that, then it's probably going to break anyway. So we need to say, yes, implementations, even if you don't want to support backend TLS policy, you got to add, in order to be conformant, with backend TLS policy, you're going to have to, watch it and reject traffic that doesn't. It's the first time we've ever had a rule like that. It does make the interaction with the extended feature a bit funky, because that is a case where the extended feature then means there's behavior whether or not you support the extended feature. You still need to run tests for that extended feature. So I think this one's a little tricky. I would definitely, Winnie, I would definitely say don't worry too much about it right for now. Get the other ones in first. This one is going to be a bit funky, and we're going to have a think about how we make this work. We're probably going to need to talk to the other conformance leads about what they want to do here as well.
Okay, thanks for that. And do we have any previous art around this? Like, did we attempt to do this in any of our other policies?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Backend TLS policies is actually the first policy that we're adding to the API. So it's sort of I'm not surprised that we're finding some things like this. It does kind of suck to have to deal with them. I agree, but I really appreciate you and Candace doing such great work to sort of actually work through the detail of all this stuff that we've been talking about for ages. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And I'd say even, although we have another policy in the works, backend LB policy, I think we called it, with session persistence, I think that's one that will have a different behavior of, if you can't support it, you can ignore it, and that's okay, because that's more of a, nice to have, instead of anything with TLS is fairly sensitive, and security, you can't make something like that optional. You can either reject or validate. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a whole new world. I agree with everything Nick said. We just probably need a PR or discussion. Like, I know we've said, oh, we're just going to reject every request, or require that every request is rejected, but even that's pretty vague. Like, what status code do you send? What, just, how exactly do you do that? Probably needs discussion, PR, or something, just focused on that one detail before we even get to conformance tests.
Yeah. But again, this is one of the great places where trying to do conformance tests is what finds this sort of issue, because you can't do a conformance test without precisely defining the behavior. This isn't the first time that we've had that happen, where we've gone to write conformance tests and said, oh, actually, we've got to go back and make an update to the GEP to define a couple of things that we missed. So I think it is one of the best things about doing conformance, is that it makes you actually, eventually you've got to write down in code what the behavior is, and a lot of the time that means that you need to be very specific about what the behavior is, and that makes for a tighter and better spec.
Thank you. And I missed last week's meeting. Is the backend TLS policy still carded to enter this release once the conformance tests get in?
I don't think we're gonna be able to make the release as such as like graduating, but I really would love to see conformance tests in this release, because what we see is most implementations are running conformance tests as pre-submits, as whatever, based on a released version of Gateway API. So if we can get conformance tests in this cycle, then we can have confidence that we have a lot of implementations that have submitted conformance reports that include this and are regularly running these tests. So in a sense, I'd say it's very much in scope, and it's something we want to include. I just don't think we can actually bump the version quite yet.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. And can I say again, Winnie, it's really great to have you pushing really hard on this, and getting some great work done. Conformance stuff is very chop wood, carry water, but it's really, really vital that we have a good conformance test suite. And so it really is one of the best ways for people to get involved. It's just awesome to see. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Stu.
Yeah, it's amazing. The one other thing I wanted to cover on backend TLS policy, I think you opened it up, Nick, is just this conversation on personas with backend TLS policy,
Yeah.
which I don't have an answer. I just feel like we haven't gotten it quite right yet. And so I just want to direct people to this and would appreciate some more comments specifically. My working theory is that we have 3 different things in the policy right now, and 2 of them clearly belong to one persona and 1 belongs to the other. And that is really messy at a minimum. So just trying to think this through a bit more of who we're targeting with this policy, and if there are other things we can do that could help, like maybe if we think some of these things actually are owned by the gateway owner, maybe some of this config goes to gateway level and this service level is like an override or something like that. I'm not clear yet, but I just would appreciate some more discussion on this one, because I think this is going to be a big deal as we understand that this is really truly ready for GA. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of the things where having the personas is really helpful. Gaurav, do you want to run us through the upcoming Gateway Kettle features?
Yes, give me a moment, please. I hope you all can hear me.
Yep.
Awesome. So yes, I really wanted to talk about some of the upcoming features that we've been planning for Gateway Cuttle. Nick, if you could open up the README. Yes. So I was just discussing some of these things with Rob the past week about what are the essential things that we may need to prioritize for people to encourage use of Gateway Cuttle. And it seems like one of those things would definitely be supporting some of the essential things which kubectl already does. Now, it does seem like in some cases we are reinventing the wheel, but if we really want people to start using some of these things, then, for example, some things like creating resources would be an essential thing. So to start out with, Gateway Cuttle, so the PR that I've also linked, that does enable creating resources through Gateway Cuttle. Let's just go back to the README. I think I'll quickly walk us through the README, and I guess because we have a light agenda, we have some time over here. So the first things is basically allowing people to create resources with Gateway Cuttle. The experience is mostly similar to what kubectl does offer. Now, at the moment, there isn't any addition when it comes to being helpful with respect to gateway APIs over here, but definitely in the future we could add more improvements, like when deciding when some certain migrations would need to be done. For example, if you're migrating from one API version to the other, this is a path which could be taken to enable those migrations. Definitely not something which we have right now, but having something like this enables that for the future. The next set of things that this PR would enable is, again, the basic resource management is fetching any kind of gateway resources or any other resources as well. The next step is policy exploration. This is also something which already existed, but that did need some refinement in terms of finesse. So these are the commands that we would now be supporting, basically policy CRDs, lists all the CRDs, etc. Let's move on to the next part. Again, beyond gateway API resources. This is also something which is similar, which does feel like reinventing, but if someone does decide to use gateway Cuttle, they may need to fetch the other resources as well, in addition to just gateway API resources. So you should now be able to do that with gateway Cuttle itself. So far, this has all been what kubectl should already be offering, but the next step is where people will start to see like some real usages. For example, if you were to describe some of the resources which are specifically for gateway API, you should see like things like what's been printed over there. For example, if you were to describe a gateway, you would see all of these additional information over there. And this is like what the PR also, all of this is actually workable with that PR. For example, you'll be able to see attached routes, backends, etc. I think it's called out over there. Again, one additional thing which, if you could move on to the next section, Nick. Yeah, this is another helpful thing which we felt was that if there's some problems with those gateway resources, in addition to describing all those things, there would be an analysis section which can point out potential problems for you. For example, in this case, if I deleted a reference grant and then I try to describe an HTTP route, what that will tell you is that some reference which was initially permitted by the reference grant is no longer permitted. So the analysis section will describe any kinds of those things. The other thing which analysis section describes is invalid references. For example, when an HTTP route references something which does not exist. So this is also one of those errors which could be revealed over here. The other part is right now we only have a limited set of analysis that is performed. But the other part with the code restructuring is that people should be able to add these analysis easily in the future. So the idea is something along the line of that these analyses are performed in a way like webhooks are implemented in Kube API server. So essentially what you'll be doing is you'll be adding something like a webhook, but obviously it's not a webhook, it's a webhook for Gateway Cuddle. And you will be reporting back your analysis, and then we'll be able to list them to the user. The other bit is, so the part so far, sorry, Rob, yeah.
Yeah, this is awesome. First, just while I'm thinking about this, you have the analysis bit and you have the apply bit. Is there anything in the apply bit that does the like analysis check before it applies?
Not right now. That is something which we definitely could do, but right now apply is completely similar to what kubectl would do.
Cool.
The analysis part is something different. So what analysis will give you is it will not apply our resources. For example, what it will give you is it will describe three kinds of scenarios. One is the issues which could be introduced if you were to apply those changes. The second bit is the issues which will be fixed if you were to apply those changes, which is existing issues fixed. The third bit is something which is those issues which were already there and those are still not fixed. So the analysis is reporting you these three kinds of categories. Again, this is something which I expect is something which should work along similar to how webhooks work. So people should be able to add more validations in the future easily. Moving on to the next bit, which is, yeah, I think this just describes examples of what analysis could do. You could, again, some of the normal things are you could perform analysis through a file. You could say, hey, analyze this file for me, or analyze that input, just standard stuff. The next bit is, again, being able to visualize some of these things. So what you could do is you could, in addition to having all the output options like JSON and YAML, you could output something like graph, which will give you a dot graph notation representation of your resources, and then you could render them. So this is an example of what should be feasible. Obviously, I'm not sure how well this scales. I have been trying to think about making it possible so that it scales to lots of resources, but this is still an experimental thing. The last thing, again, is one of those essentials which people may need, which is deleting resources. Again, one of the things which I have been, I personally am not sure about is what is the fine line that we draw when about duplicating features from kubectl and not duplicating them. My take over here is that for enabling some things which are especially about gateway API, there's certain things which we definitely will need to duplicate, which is why some of these things exist right now. But open to suggestions or any other ideas about that.
Yeah, this is really awesome. I would say
Great.
on that last point, I would suggest maybe we add some kind of artificial boundary for now, where we only allow gateway and gateway related resources, like maybe everything under gateway API group plus maybe service and service import ish, like things that we expect to be targets or policies. I don't know, but it's really messy. I don't know where you draw that line. The problem is if people get used to using gateway cuddle for deployments or some other thing, then it's hard to take a feature back, right? Like you can always add features, but it's really hard to remove them in the future. But yeah, this is amazing. I am excited to play with this more.
Yeah, I think the graph thing is particularly excellent. That's sort of one of the biggest things that we have is people people not understanding how their system of resources is laid out. And I think being able to render a graph is amazing. I do think I wouldn't worry too much about the scale of the graph render. I have seen like ridiculously big dot graphs rendered before. We had a dot graph output in Contour, or there is one in Contour as well. And yeah, it's just a big text file at the end of the day, and computers that are rendering it are pretty grunty these days. We should worry about that if and when it becomes a problem, not upfront. Don't worry too much about scalability there. I do think that the graph rendering is actually something that may be people may want to be very interested in consuming as part of UIs or something like that as well, because if we can give you something that generates the graph details for you and you don't need to do all that logic, then that would be very useful for people who are making UIs, because if you can take the dot and output like D3 JavaScript or something like that, then you can create one of those force directed graphs that and sorts itself out and organizes itself properly, and you can move the nodes around and all that sort of cool stuff. So yeah, I think that's a really great tool for analysis and stuff like that. I also really like Rob's idea that and to be clear, this thing as it stands, this PR as it stands is amazing, and you have done fantastic work. I do think that a future thing that would be amazing, even more amazing to see, is that the apply code calls the analyze code first, and sort of says if there are potential issues introduced, then it'll be like, hey, I'm not going to apply this without you saying no. I definitely want you to apply this. Sort of effectively having a bit of a prevent foot guns stage in gateway kettle apply would be really neat. Yeah, I think that would be great. But yeah, really great stuff, man. I did it. I have seen the PR, but given the size, I haven't been able to have a chance to have a look at it yet. And I completely agree that it is worth doing this in one PR. But yeah, it's going to take a little while for us to review it, I suspect, because it's a big change.
Got it. Thanks a lot for the feedback, Nick. Again, this for the size of the PR, I really wanted to do this in one PR again because I wanted to speed the process forward so that one of the things which having features does is definitely people also use it, but the other things is people are also excited about contributing things, because if the features don't exist, people don't feel excited about actually contributing stuff. So they should also serve that purpose that okay, if people are excited about this, there'll be more contributions coming for this.
Yeah, I particularly like adding in extensions and stuff like that. That's particularly good because it gives folks an easy onboarding place.
But yeah, definitely some of these things could further be refined, but we could do that iteratively.
Yeah.
But any other feedback that you think of, please feel free to drop it in the comments or on Slack.
Will do.
One of the things I think we've talked a little bit about this is I really want to have a path for supported features for Gateway Cuddle to read supported features and warn when somebody's trying to use a feature that we know is not supported by the implementation they're trying to use it with, basically, right? Like to pull that all together. And I'm not saying, like, obviously this PR should not try and accomplish that. That's a lot. But what I would like for cross-pollination is just for, like, since you are, basically leading this Gateway Cuddle effort, just to make sure that whatever we're doing, since we're already doing a breaking change and supported features, could at least theoretically support that in Gateway Cuddle in the future, just so we don't have to do like another round of breaking changes over there. Again, I don't exactly know what this looks like. I just want to make sure we have a path that could work.
Oh yeah,
this is
definitely. I think I forgot to mention this, so thanks a lot for bringing this up. Supported features is definitely one of those things which I had at the back of my mind while I was actually working on this. So in the future, yes, this PR definitely doesn't contain that, but in the future, we definitely should work on adding that stuff as well.
cool.
Also, from the maintainers, I think I definitely would like ideas on what are some other things which you think Gateway Cuddle should accomplish in addition to what we already have. There is also definitely that question of whether the Gateway Cuddle should exist in the first place or not. Because if there's not enough things which we are trying to accomplish through Gateway Cuddle, then maintaining this is definitely a burden. So let's think about that as well.
I think we've been doing a lot of building Gateway Cuddle to do things that we as developers think are useful, and I think that's good. I think evangelism and getting more connected with users, getting it in the hands of users, which is very hard work, is going to be necessary to go forward and actually figure out what it is we need to be doing with this. And to your point, if we need to be doing this. Obviously KubeCons and stuff like that are a good opportunity for that, but even just blog posts and any user facing tool like this, a lot of evangelism can be very helpful, and I think that's what we should be doing with Gateway Cuddle.
I see. Got it.
Yeah, and I think the +1 to everything you said there, and I think basically we need that baseline set of features where there's enough here where people actually want to use it. And then once we have that, I think, sharing it with the world is important, and then getting feedback on what else is useful. So like, yeah, I completely agree. Something like at KubeCon, hopefully at least maintainer track, maybe more. Blog post, whatever. Yeah, I think
CNCF webinars
incredible.
get some pretty good attendance too, actually, and they're pretty
It's
easy
true.
to get.
Oh, that's a good point.
Got it. I'll note this down. I had no idea there was such a thing. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially once we merge this, it'll actually be way easier to get people excited about it, because you've got very visible, very easy to demonstrate features. So really easy to write a demo for Gateway Kettle Analyze, right? Like really easy, or to write a demo for Gateway Kettle Display and for the dot output. Really, really easy for those to to really produce some very punchy sort of demo-y kind of things that will show people the sorts of cool stuff it can do. So yeah, Lucky again, great work. Really good stuff, man. Really good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate you, Gaurav.
Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Gaurav. So Rob Scott.
Yeah, just heads up. Finally, had a long last review or two would be great, but we've finally crossed that line. Have some conformance reports in, and there's I did reference, or actually you referenced a issue. If you scroll down to actually just a little bit down in that file, the very bottom of the file you're looking at, there is a caveat that there's one specific flake, have an issue, have a discussion about that. Yeah. But that's, I think, understandable in my opinion.
Yep.
The way we're running tests internally, we never run into that, obviously, but we want to have a standard reproducible way to run tests that isn't flaky. And so we have a workaround that we think will work as a PR as well. But yeah, that's all.
Very cool.
Fantastic, man.
Cool.
And congrats.
And yeah, really nice work on the reproduction steps too.
Yes. Thanks. This is all you, who is, yeah, he's done a lot of the work on conformance for us. So great to see it come through.
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks. You.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that is the end of the agenda. So we do have a little bit of time if anyone wants to ask any questions or talk about anything else.
I'm good.
Christine.
Oh yeah, so I was wondering for the gRPC timeout, I opened up a PR and then Richard left a lot of comments, and a lot of them I think were alluding to the idea of the service mesh gamma piece, but without any of the proxies. I was just wondering if there's any like lore or past discussions about that, because I do see it in the gRPC route gap, but then I tried searching around on GitHub and didn't really see anything else around that. So I was just wondering if anyone knows anything else about that.
Yeah, I don't think there was a lot of explicit discussion about it, but we definitely did talk about how we want gRPC route to be able to work for gamma. And so and also in the case that you're running that your gateway implementation is implemented using an upstream load balancer or something like that, rather than and so that you're not going through an actual proxy. It should make sense, at least. I think we haven't worried too much about that previously because we just haven't had many implementations that were not proxies. And practically a lot of the stuff requires something that looks very much like a proxy if it's not actually a proxy. So yeah, I think I haven't sort of sat down and really parsed that feedback very well myself. But I think in terms of sort of gamma support, yeah, ideally, whatever we do for north-south should work for east-west as well, without too much change. And I think in the case of gRPC route timeouts, probably that's the case. I think the problem for gRPC route timeouts is that, a lot of us who haven't spent a lot of time working with gRPC route were like, oh, that's basically HTTP route with extra steps, right? We should just be able to do the same thing. And I think Richard did a good job of sort of disabusing me of that notion that, hey,
Oh
because
yeah, no, I got a slice of humble pie too.
yeah. So because it's designed to do different things, timeouts kind of mean different things. And so it could be that we may need to sort of go back to the drawing board a little bit on this one. But again, that is not to diminish the impact of the stuff that you've done already. Like, it is really important that we would never have found out that until someone started doing this work, right? Like, and so like this is a, it can really suck to sort of come and see your PR and have it have like 30 or 40 comments on it. It can be very intimidating, trust me, I know. But like I think that is the sign of a feature that people are actually interested in and excited about. And so like, it is worth keeping going. So I will commit that I'll have a look at this today or tomorrow, and sort of put my thoughts on there as well. And I think, I think that it may just mean that we need to rethink a little bit what we're talking about when we talk about timeouts. One of the reasons that we kept HTTP route timeouts very general is for exactly this sort of problem where we weren't 100. Timeouts are like kind of the same, but also completely different in every detail. Like, so every data plane implements timeouts differently enough that it's actually very difficult to find commonality. And so I would guess it's actually going to be slightly simpler for gRPC route because gRPC is a standard that does have its own ways of talking about things. And I don't think that you will be able to get around doing things in the way that the spec expects. But we are still going to need to, like, I think we're going to need to walk back a little bit and be like, what do timeouts actually mean for gRPC?
For sure.
Sort of where I think we'll need to be.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, and no rush on the feedback. I know that you're pretty slammed and everyone else is pretty slammed too. So
yeah, I think that actually kind of reminds me of a thing I was thinking about talking about today. But yeah, I think that it's actually the being slammed is actually sort of fading off a little bit because we're kind of coming to the end of the sort of the GEP phase, the GEP implementation, and we're heading into the API refinement phase now, where it's going to be more code review and less GEP review. One of the things I did want to talk about is that I think one of the side effects we've had of, which is kind of one of the side effects we've had of introducing the phased process. Sorry, actually, this is a different subject. So, Christine, are you happy with where we got to before I change?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Cool. One of the things I've been thinking is that I think a good and bad thing about the more phased process is that it's helped people stay focused on the things that we really need to do to move the API forward. The downside is that it kind of puts a little bit of it gives a little bit of the message of don't work on things that aren't in scope. And I think my recollection of when we were talking about this earlier was that we don't necessarily want to stop people from doing provisional work to get GEPs into a provisional state is 100% fine to keep going no matter what the phase is. And that, thanks. Rob is nodding. I think that's what we agreed, and it's good to hear that I remember correctly. But the big message that I wanted to send to people is, if you have a feature you really, really want, it's 100% fine for you to start the background work, to start the what and the why, and to do background reviews and prior art reviews. There is no you don't need to wait for that, for your GEP to be in scope for a release to do that stuff. So if you really, really wanted cause, say, which is one that people have definitely asked for many times, you don't need to wait for the cause GEP to be in scope to do like what is cause? Why do people want it? What do different data planes do, and how can we start looking for commonalities? That stuff is 100% fine to go ahead at any time. And I know we've got a number of other features that people want. Auth and circuit breaking are probably two of the other biggest ones. It doesn't need to wait for the GEP to be in scope for that background work to proceed. And that background work is one of the best places for people who are interested in getting more involved in Gateway API to get started on, because you don't need to know a lot about Gateway API to be able to say, what's cause? Why would people want it? And how do different data planes implement cause? Right? You don't need to know a lot about the API to get started on those things. And that work is so useful, but it can be quite time consuming, right? Because you've got to go and look at all of the documentation for all the different data planes and, figure out who supports what feature and how it's different and how it's the same. And, it can be quite time consuming, but not doesn't require deep knowledge of Gateway API. And so, I really want to make sure I've definitely seen, a few more people, like a few more new faces coming in who are quite excited and looking for stuff to do. I also want to spend a bit of time and try and polish some of these GEPs that are sort of at this stage that need a GEP, that I can put a very clear to-do list for some of these GEPs, and so that people can we can mark those as good first issue, because I think that the provisional phase of GEPs is actually one of the best places for us to have good first issues. And Shane, I know you've thought a lot about attracting new folks. Do you agree there that sort of provisional is a good spot for new contributors to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to see us get to a point where we're very flexible during the provisional phase.
I agree.
I think we've been a little too rigid with it in the past.
Yep. And I think as long as the provisional GEP is keeping to, the what and the why and the background review, and not suggesting APIs, then your GEP will go in really easily. It's when you start adding APIs that you start ending up with 200 comments on your thing.
Yeah, and actually, while we're there talking about this, we're trying to add some guidance to kind of like the SIG network community documentation, basically to show people how to do, or rather provide guidance and best practices on how to create a CRD-based extension API that's official. And the reason that we're doing that is because Gateway API did it first, network policy did it second, now multi-network's doing it. So at this point, it's a pattern. So having some guidance available seemed useful. But interestingly enough, on top of being useful for people who want to build CRD APIs, there's a whole section I'm trying to write specifically about this, like trying to encourage new projects to do enhancement proposals this way. So here's a link I'll put in the whatchamacallit here.
I'll put some notes in about what I've just said after. I can't type and talk at the same time.
Yeah, no worries. So if you're interested in kind of more about this, or if you want to contribute, there's to a document that's trying to help kind of define a little bit more how these sub-projects work or provide more guidance. Then this branch is where I've started, and I've been encouraging and like basically inviting people to join in if you would like to join in. But anyway, it's interesting to read. If nothing else, it's relevant to what we were just talking about. And there's a thread going on about it, and that's in our mailing list, which I linked as well.
Yep. Awesome.
Awesome.
Go, Rob.
No, that's it. Sorry. Yeah, I'm good.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, well, I think that's definitely the end of the agenda. So, well, again, we've come to the end of the agenda. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add? If not, we can. I can give you all 10 minutes back in your day.
I want to go eat dinner.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't want hungry Shane, so let's let you go and eat your dinner. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming as always. And hopefully we will see you all on Slack or next week at the Pacific morning time. I probably will not be there because it's
8 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1 o'clock in the morning my time. Sorry. So yeah, we will we'll see you all around. Thanks very much, everyone.
Great.
Cheers,
See ya.
everybody.
Bye.